Welcome to episode 68 of Enemy of the State's Dank Pod Stash. Before we get started with the show, the Dank Pod Stash is officially sponsored by Anarchy Lifting. It's time to get hashtag Boogaloo ready and in fighting shape. Greg Papanikolaou is going to get you there with personalized meal plans, training, group support, and tons of amazing fitness and motivational resources and knowledge, including the Project Sparta Facebook group. You can go to anarchyliftingcoach.com and learn more about Greg's work and how he's going to work for you. When you're ready to get signed up and get fit, go to gregpapanikolaou.clickfunnels.com/opt-in. Don't worry, those links will be in the description, and you can get started on your path to health. I'm in Project Sparta now. I'm down some pounds already. I'm feeling great, feeling strong. I'm loving the personalized menu and workouts, and Greg has stuck with me through the holidays even. You know, it's rough sometimes trying to hit your workouts and all that through the holidays. Greg checks on you. He makes sure you're hitting your goals. He helps you out. It's a part of the whole package you get with Anarchy Lifting. Don't be that guy that only sits around and talks about change, whether it's your health, the Boogaloo, whatever. Get up, start learning, drilling, and training. One of the most important parts of prepping, no matter what for, is your physical health. Get to anarchyliftingcoach.com now and get after it. And speaking of Boogaloo, all you boogie boys in Virginia tomorrow at the rally, stay safe. You know, stay safe, stay smart, be vigilant. We're all pulling for you, okay? We got your backs. We also have a special offer for our listeners from friends of the show, author and content creator Shane Radliff of Liberty Under Attack Publications. Take 10% off your order at libertyunderattack.com by using the coupon code DANK10, DANK10. They have books focusing on self-liberation, freedom strategy, solutions, and more. Current books include Hashtag Agora, Second Realm, Book on Strategy, Ben Stone's Sedition, Subversion, and Sabotage, and Shane's very own Vanu, A Strategy for Self-Liberation. They also offer assistance to new authors throughout the publishing process, including editing, proofreading, formatting for Kindle and paperback, and full-service audiobook productions. That's Liberty Under Attack Publications. Share your story, find your freedom. Got to shout out Bad Moon Hemp. Check out badmoonhemp.wordpress.com. It's your one-stop shop for all your handmade hemp needs. I use their beard oil and beard balm. Beard's feeling great, looking great. You can see it if you're watching on YouTube. Now, prepare yourselves for a deep episode 68 of the Dank Pod Stash with Dharma Eyer. And check the links to get her book. It's only $5 and it's fucking phenomenal. Enjoy.
Enemy of the state.
An enemy of the state.
Enemy of the state.
Dank Pod Stash.
You're listening to Enemy of the State's Dank Pod Stash. Check out thedankpodstash.com to find every episode of the Dank Pod Stash, links to support the show via our Bitbacker and Patreon, Dank Pod Stash merchandise, and much more. If you'd like to advertise on the Dank Pod Stash, email us at dankpodstash@gmail.com. Welcome back to another episode of Enemy of the State's Dank Pod Stash. I'm your host, NonVotingNick, and I'm joined today by Dharma Eyer. Slowly becoming, or not slowly, but quickly becoming one of my new favorite people. Dharma wrote My Shadow, which is an excellently written novella, amazing read, and we're going to talk about that today. Before we jump into that, introduce yourself. Tell us about you. Tell us about how you came to Anarchy, all that good stuff.
Cool. I am Dharma Eyer. Lately I've been running around as Jackie Kerouac, in case anyone's curious. My whole life has been kind of anarchy, but now it's more of a chosen path than a path, I guess. I had a rough upbringing. I'm a high school dropout. I'm a college dropout. I don't conform really well. I kind of just want to be left alone, I think. And so my path to anarchy, I really don't identify with any particular brand of anarchy or group.
Sure.
It's kind of a hodgepodge of a lot. I really probably am closest to an agorist just because I'm really into like self sustaining, sourcing your own food, being self sufficient, like to the max. Um, and I'm not like really a super consumer, so I guess a voluntarist.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hell yeah. No, that's great. That's awesome that you identify most closely with agorism, because that's what this show's all about. Well, it's an interview show lately, but it's founded on agorism. Yeah. Existing outside of the state's coercion. And I definitely get when you say that you just want to be left alone. That's how I feel. That's how a lot of people feel. That's surprisingly becoming a debate. If I can kind of derail from our conversation back to Boogaloo stuff that I always talk about. The debate around Boogaloo is we just want to be left alone, and the government's not leaving us alone. They're trying to infringe, and yet some people think that we're overstepping by pushing for self-defense against the state. It's a weird debate that's going on online. I've got a debate hopefully coming up to be recorded this Thursday on that too, so we'll get in depth on that. But for now, let's talk about your book. Let's talk about My Shadow. It's although a short read, a very in-depth and excellent read. I enjoyed it very much. And so it's kind of, is it kind of an autobiography written in, I don't know how to say, I guess a novel form. It's not just a straight up autobiography.
Yeah, no, it's I guess I struggled with trying to find what the genre was. And my whole life is a hodgepodge. It's not just anarchy. I think the book is like historical fiction, I guess. Like
Okay.
it's my history, um, but it's been embellished, it's been changed, it's been kind of given a dose of steroids a little bit. But
Mm-hmm.
almost all of those events happened, just maybe not in that form.
Sure. Yeah, it's I guess somewhat a lot metaphorical in some parts, especially when I'm guessing it's
Yeah.
your former self that you're rescuing at one part in the book from that very dark room that's locked up.
Yeah.
That was an excellent part. That part had me on the edge of my seat, stressed out a little bit. The illustrations of the feelings in that were great. So yeah, go ahead
Awesome.
and break down the basic plot of the book for people real quick. Just a short or a short description of that.
I think it's so relatable because everyone's gone through something, right? Like everyone has a past, everyone has like a dark side, everyone has like this shadow person that keeps them from like really killing it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so, really, the story is about this woman who is not in peace. She is she's stressed out. She doesn't know really why. She's pretty successful in life, but she's missing something, you know. And the story progresses, and she kind of decides that it's time to make peace with her past. And part of that, I think it's really hard to make that into a read that people want to read. So it really just kind of flowed into like a story and used metaphors. Releasing a kid from a dungeon really is probably the best visualization for making peace with your demons,
Yeah, and there's
letting them out.
some monumental demons that had to be faced. I would imagine in your life, because the book is based on your life, and in the book as well. When we first spoke,
Yeah.
kind of got in contact about this, and we're talking about it. We were talking about sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, that kind of stuff, and those are events that happen in the book, and that's reading the book and seeing all the bad actors involved in that part of your life and the book's plot lines. Like, holy shit, that's like a whole town, almost a community of people that were doing this, and people don't realize how far that it extends sometimes. I think it's maybe one or two people victimizing somebody, but yeah. And you said that it was stuff that pretty much all happened to you. So that's family and people and authority figures. That's insane. And that's what led to,
Yeah.
I guess, living on the streets then?
Yeah. It was kind of a perfect storm. I, you know, when you go through such a heavy time, I think your first instinct is to escape, like get
Mm-hmm.
out, And my escape was so much bigger. My escape was suicide attempts. I had attempted suicide several times, successfully a few. Um, I just needed out, but I wasn't quite sure what out looked like other than the ultimate out.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just kind of decide I'm not this is enough. This isn't normal, And so you kind of take a stand for yourself, become an advocate, even if that means you're going to be homeless.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're worth it. I know that sounds crazy, but to stay complacent is to die,
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is really true with current events too, what's happening with government. I think the more we say it's okay, the more they're just going to take. And I think it's really up to us to say, fucking stop, no more,
Yeah.
And I think that book, going through those emotions and being homeless and saying, I'm not going to let this happen anymore. And it's rough, because you're so young, on the street, fending for yourself, and you get really creative, um, because you have to. And so I think it's just really, it's important to just stand up for
Mm-hmm.
yourself, even if it means putting yourself in a very uncomfortable situation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That it's a straight line from that to our situation right now with government. Probably every situation with government, because you can withdraw and they can still come after you. You have to stand up and push back and make yourself not available for their coercion in one way or another. So one recurring theme in the book that I wanted to ask about was what was it, a purple anemone flower? And that was
Yeah.
a tattoo on the leg of a person that the main character knows and was around for a while, but then it showed up in different forms. What's the story around that?
So it's funny. So when I started writing My Shadow, it started off as just the going to let her out. And when I got a publishing agreement for just 4,000 words, it was asked of me by the publisher to make it longer.
Mm, sure.
So I had a really great support system. A lot of the people that we're friends with in these groups really kind of gave me a lot of don't start over, just elaborate. And so trying to come up with inspiration, trying to come up with some sort of storyline that would flow, I started finding myself going through old books from college. Um, I long story short, I went to film school for a couple of years
Mm-hmm.
and found myself in a writing program. And so I had written a few stories about pop culture. And there was one particular story about pop culture that had the school really buzzing when I was present in that college. And so I thought I could probably turn this into like a aha
Sure.
moment. Like in real life, we have these like signs, these serendipitous type of situations, and I was trying to recreate that.
Yeah. Nice. Awesome. Um, yeah, it was just interesting. It was like seeing the flower was it became an unavoidable thing that triggered a lot of stuff, that triggered a lot of action, and that's interesting. Was the flower an image that was present in your actual real life?
No, not at all. Not at all. Um, so the flower, I wanted something that was deeper than just the original story. When I wrote it in college, was a picture of a teddy bear.
Mm.
And it was kind of the same premise. The person was like really anxious and really like, and there was this advertisement of a teddy bear and it smelled like an old t-shirt and it brought the person peace for whatever reason. So kind of the same storyline, but with real life. I wanted layers, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
In real life, if you're on your path to make peace with your past, odd sometimes, not always, but sometimes something triggers you, a memory, a smell, a word. And so that was a layer, like trying to trigger that like response, that flashback. That was kind of the catalyst to this. But then I also wanted something that had a deeper meaning, like I didn't just want like a picture of a bear. I wanted something that was um, different. And if you Google the anemone flower, it's a flower for, peace, for healing, for your journey to like become whole. And I think that's really, really important that this message speaks to you in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely. And it just keeps blowing my mind, the parallels between your story and the situation of being an anarchist in general, and also that
Yeah.
the the main aggressors in the book, for I'd say the majority of them seem to be either agents of the state or people in maybe a religious hierarchical position. Was so, and I'm sure since it came from your real life that that's the way that it happened. But I don't know. I think people could see it as an excellent metaphor as well. Were you aware of that as you were writing it?
To some degree, I was. On some level, I was conscious with what I was choosing. On another level, the story really wrote itself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes the truth is better than fiction. Um, I think it's to be expected when you put people in power. I think power tends to bring out people that probably shouldn't be in power. And I think I learned that really early on in my life, which again was a catalyst to anarchy.
Mm-hmm.
People do bad things, and you give people the freedom to do bad things, and they absolutely will do them.
Yeah. Yeah, the state, the way it's set up, protects the people who do bad things, even in the situations where they're supposed to be punishing them, where they're supposedly punishing them. Um, like, rapists, child molesters, things like that end up in prison, and it's a more protected place for them than they would be if they were on the streets, open to the repercussions of what they'd done. Um, yeah, it's a wild world.
Yeah.
It gets me deep thinking about the connections between your book and the discussions I've been having lately. So that's really good. And I know you said you have a sequel in the works as well. So I don't, if I'm asking questions that are going to give away stuff from the sequel, feel free not to answer them. But I was hoping you could expand on some kind of, it was a bit of time that's missing from the book, I guess, and probably intentionally. And that's from the struggles that you went through until you like got your apartment and your good job and whatnot in the book. What happened in the interim there?
Yeah. So much. It was such a short span of time, in just a blink.
Mm-hmm.
In I'm almost 40 now, so just 3 years. But in 3 years, it was a ton. So I was homeless for about 3 years, from about 17 until 20 or so. And at 20, I had a friend that I kind of stayed on her corner. As crazy as that sounds, there was a construction site and her apartment was kind of around the corner. We became really, really super close friends. And she was telling me, "Hey, I'm moving to Chicago." And at the time, I was living in like Podunk, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought to get out of town, to get like a totally fresh start would be huge, you know? So she knew my situation. She also knew that I was very employable. You know, I just didn't, being homeless, it's hard to get back on your feet.
Sure.
You need an address. It's a big to do. So I took her up on it. And, you know, we went up to Chicago for a month or so. I got a job as a waitress and a bartender. And from there, I got my own place. And from there, it was just, I just took off. I enrolled in Columbia in Chicago for their film. And even though I didn't graduate from high school, I got my GED a year before I was supposed to graduate. I
Nice.
dropped out as a sophomore. So in the class of 99 on paper, but I should have been the class of 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And so I enrolled in college for a couple of years and I took some writing classes and some fine art classes and tried to figure out who I was. And I really did wander into a real estate office. I really did bullshit my way into getting a job to be their marketer.
Nice.
I didn't become an ad person. I thought maybe that was going to be my path, but I found my way in oil and gas instead. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
So at what point in time did you start writing the story in your life?
Yeah, the story got written in June.
Oh, dang. Okay. So not long ago at all. Nice.
No, it hasn't even been a year since it's been written. I think I started writing it in June. I finished in September. I got published in October, and I finished it the end of October.
Awesome. So it really is pretty much a memoir and with some illustration to it. Because I thought maybe since you mentioned
Yeah.
you didn't end up in ads that you had written it before you figured out what path you were on. That's really interesting. It's a good angle for the book though, for sure.
I thought maybe if I could bring it together, you know, at least give you an idea of who this person was, even though she hasn't quite figured it out, but learning together, I guess.
So, do you still feel separated from your past, or is the book or just yourself? The way you described it, it seems like you came together after knowing that you had to, or that you felt you needed to.
Yeah, I think the book, I think I had been, you know, I've been on this like spiritual journey for forever, you know. Um, I studied to be a Buddhist priest for like a few years, just trying to find my path, I guess. And so, a lot like Vincent van Gogh, I tried all kinds of fucking different paths trying to find peace. And I thought maybe if I start writing a story about maybe making peace with my past, maybe I'll do it. You know, maybe it will like help me be the therapy that I needed to like go for it, you know? And so when I started writing the book in June, I went through it.
I bet.
I I struggled, and I'm sure there are people on Facebook that are like, yeah. I struggled hardcore, and thank goodness there are a lot of good people online because so many reached out and were like, "It's okay, you know, you're doing great, keep going, and it's gonna get better." And thank you.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I went through it. That was therapy for me. And when I finished the book, I felt like I did this. I can do this. You
Good.
know, I got it.
Yeah. It was powerful in the way that that came together. So I can't even imagine how it felt to actually be happening to you. Yeah, that's wild. To circle back to about what you were talking about, how hard it is to kind of get out of being homeless and get back to getting a job because you don't have an address or anything like that. A lot of people don't realize that when they're talking about people who are in that situation. It's definitely a struggle because and it's mostly from government. Is actually all from government that you have to have your ID and an address and all that different kind of stuff to get a job. And it's the war on homeless. Fuck the war on cops. The war on the homeless, the poor, whatever, is perpetuated by government, and it's a real thing. It's just insane to me the levels they'll go to keep people not only from helping themselves, but other people from helping them, especially if it's outside of how they want them to be, quote unquote, helped. What kind of run-ins with government did you have during your time when you were homeless? Yeah, I bet a lot.
Oh my. Yeah, I mean, probably like most of the homeless, I spent a lot of time in jail, which I've heard people make the statements like that must have been nice for you. You got a bed to sleep in or something, and
Right.
no,
No, not at
not a
all.
vacation, not the Hilton. Okay, it's bad. It's no good. Um, but yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time in jail. I spent a lot of time running. Um, you fight when you have to fight. You run when you can't fight. And so it's exhausting. You can't be in certain parks after night. Police will come. You can't. You really can't be a female on the street at all. Um, it's really kind of rough because you have to definitely protect yourself more from both police and other deviant homeless.
Sure.
I think people see a homeless person and maybe not even put it in their head, but I think they just see the homeless and think less than, or they fucked up, or it's a drug issue, or bad choices. And it's not always. Sometimes it's just you're 16 and you can't get an apartment. Sometimes, it's not always because the person fucked up. It could be a lot of different things. And I think compassion, when dealing with people on the street, goes a long fucking way.
Yeah. And, like it says in your story, escaping from abuse, that it puts you in that situation, I would imagine, very often for a lot of people. And it seems like a really nasty, vicious circle because then they become soft targets for people to exploit them more, which is a major part of the book as well. And, unsurprisingly, that person was a prison guard in the book who was doing that, which makes a lot of sense. Was that true to life as well?
True story. Yeah. Name and everything. I didn't change his name at all.
Yeah, good.
I was like, I'm putting you on blast.
Fuck that guy.
No, yeah, that was true to life. You can't make it up. You can't. And my stuff is probably still in his house. Like when I took off running, I took off running. Um, I would say probably just about every other female that I met had either been trafficked, had been prostituted, had put into very, very uncomfortable roles, which is why I stayed alone.
Yeah.
I knew that I wouldn't put myself in that situation, but I wasn't sure about anyone else. And it's just safer to be alone.
Yeah, that's insane. It has to happen to females a lot more often than males when they're homeless or in general. Not that it doesn't happen to everybody.
To be fair, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it happens to boys and men just as much.
Really, just as much.
I want to make sure that it's not like a fucking Me Too shit. Boys are just as victimized. When it comes to abuse and trauma, gender doesn't matter.
Yeah. So, and they're put into the trafficking situations and stuff like that just as much as well. Wow. Yeah. See, I guess the narrative doesn't really right now, the narrative, whether I guess it's a false narrative, doesn't really support that, because even I wouldn't have thought that.
I don't know what the hell is happening with culture right now because people don't know are. They're confused about if they like it in their ass or in their mouth or like holy shit. Um, and I don't really know why. We're not that much different, men and women. We're not, we're victimized just as much. Men are probably victimized more because they don't talk like
Mm,
women do.
sure.
You don't hear gaggles of men talking about how their ass. Like that just doesn't happen. Men
Right.
take that shit to their grave. So the misnomer is if they don't talk about it, it's not happening. And I think this book is really important because it's fucking happening.
Yes. That's interesting too. You hit it on the head there, that they probably talk about it less. That men probably talk about it less, because when these discussions become arguments in a lot of the places that I see, uh, people like to say, it doesn't compare. Men are victimized so much less, but they're going off of statistics collected by government and other places. And I think the only statistic that favors, which is a weird word to use, men being abused more in a lot of ways, is statistics from when they're in prison. Of men being raped specifically is much higher in prison from the male to female population. But that's a point that everyone skips over, is that not a
Yeah,
lot of guys will talk about that. And it's just ridiculous to
right.
use this kind of stuff anyways, because it doesn't matter, because it happens to either to any gender, whatever, and it doesn't really matter who's hurt more. It's that people are being hurt. And that's the thing that should be focused on. And it's similar with the argument for the number thrown around is 40%. 40% of cops abuse their spouses. And that's what's reported. It's got to be a lot higher than that,
Yeah.
because it's 2 times the average rate just from the percentages.
Yep. Yeah. And people that I saw on the street, you see a lot of castaways on the street, and quite a few were on the street because of either police violence, either a father that was a police officer or a husband that was a police officer. You see basically refugees on the street, people that are running from something. You
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah, and the uh, character in your story, I think it was your grandfather, whether or not it was actually just a character, was town sheriff, right?
Yeah, and that's also true to life. He was a sheriff. She really was a deacon in a church. And they were very popular in the community. I mean, incredibly so. They were popular just everywhere. I mean, they on the outside they were seemingly perfect. They had a lot of money that they spread around to the community. They like donated a ton of money to like children programs and
Yeah. Ugh.
gardens, and they really had this huge outreach. And so on the surface, when you find out who my grandparents are, you think she must have had like the most wonderful childhood ever to be raised by such like wonderful people. And the stuff that you don't know just
Yeah. Yeah, and because it's not all out in the open, obviously, that's the whole point. And it's got to just be mostly a cover, throwing people off the scent when that stuff is going on. Either that, or they don't put two and two together. It's wrong in their head because they're psychopaths or something like that.
probably a combination of the two. They A lot of the people that I was sold to um, didn't quite understand that what they were doing was wrong. Like
Mm.
they had justified it so much in their head that I'm just a kid. I heard that a lot. you're just a kid, like this isn't,
Jesus.
you're not even going to remember this,
Oh,
or this isn't really like, this is just what kids do, They had just really explained it away to be, it's just something that happens.
shit.
Like it's no big deal.
Holy shit. God damn. I did. Yeah. That is mind blowing. You think about people who do these disgusting things and you think, ashamed of themselves doing it in dark rooms, but it makes sense that they would justify it for themselves. But to say that to you, to a victim of whatever's happening, holy fuck, that's some twisted shit.
Yeah, they just didn't really quite understand anything. They didn't really see. I think what happens is they dehumanize kids, and I think that's also happening now with government. I think if you dehumanize people, it's so much easier to like have a war against homeless or have a
Mm-hmm.
war against
Peaceful people.
anarchists,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they just want to be left alone, and you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and you dehumanize them, and that just makes it easier to push.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's going back to them justifying it to themselves. That's a decision they're making. That's changing how they look at it, and it doesn't sound like that's a decision you would make in your mind if you're interested in changing or being rehabilitated or anything like that. And that's always a hot topic whenever anybody brings up, straight out pedophilia. Whenever people bring that up or online, anything, whenever something happens, people try to muddy the waters and make a distinction between acting and non-acting, things like that, and they can be rehabilitated. And through the last round, a while back, when the community was in an uproar about a guy who was violating his daughters, and that guy ended up going to jail, it was just a shit storm, and that kind of sent me deep into seeing, well, can these people be rehabilitated? What can happen? And it's like less than a 1% success rate of rehabilitation. And I don't trust people who are muddying
Yeah,
these lines, blurring the lines, muddying the waters. It doesn't seem like something that can be acceptable because they're not actual people. They're not moral actors. There's something wrong with them. There's something different.
right, right. I think that's really important to know also when dealing with people on the internet, because I think the internet is almost like a sanctuary for
Mm-hmm.
fucking weird. Let's just be real. Like on a different level than just sharing inappropriate memes, like it just houses a lot of people that are probably people you want to stay away from. And I think it's just really interesting when you say, can they be rehabilitated? And most of these people don't even think they're doing anything wrong.
Right.
It's hard to rehabilitate someone who is not doing anything wrong. What are
Yeah.
you rehabilitating from? And I think trying to make them understand is kind of like forcing someone to have compassion,
Sure.
forcing someone to see someone as a person, and you can't force someone to do that.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, it's wild. It's the internet is definitely a den for a lot of deviance and debauchery. Um, it's nice that
Wow.
we keep it to fun stuff like memes and whatnot as much as we can, but yeah, it's with the good comes the bad with decentralization and whatnot, and so it's up to each individual to be vigilant of that, to take care of your circle, to
Absolutely.
tend your garden and whatnot. Um, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
if anybody listens to this show or watches this show or even has access to this show who is on the streets or in a similar situation, and maybe somebody knows somebody like that. But what would you tell somebody in the situation you were in before? What can they do?
Um, it is so hard. if anybody is homeless that's watching the show, please know that I fucking get it. Um, and if you ever want to reach out to Jackie Kerouac and vent about it, I am all about hearing. And there are some tricks that I learned. I actually stole the book by Abby Hoffman, Steal This Book, when I was homeless. I heard from a hippie friend that it's got a lot of like really good advice on how to be homeless successfully without the state. Abby Hoffman is amazing. Okay, if you've never read anything that Abby Hoffman wrote, please do it. He's dead now. The state killed him,
Nah.
but he was an anarchist after my own heart. But anyway, or maybe it's Abby Kaufman.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. But anyway, fucking awesome. So I stole the book. I learned a lot of stuff on the streets about basically just kind of feeding yourself and tricks about, like making your own yogurt. I know it sounds crazy, but you got to eat, And so if you are homeless on the street, my best advice to you is save up, get a P.O. box, and then from there, you can try and get a job. And it's going to suck because you don't get paid anywhere near what you need to survive, to get an apartment, a down payment. But hear me out. If you get a shitty job, minimum wage, whatever, if that's what you got to do with a P.O. box, that's when the magic starts. You start networking, you start talking to people, you start making friends, you start finding people that have similar interests. And before you know it, opportunities come, chances come, friendships evolve. You just have to believe that this is not forever. It will change. It will get better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of hard work put into it too. One of the best quotes I've ever heard. I cannot remember who it was. I think it was someone I worked with a long time ago. Either quoted it or it's from them. But good luck is hard work residue, and that just speaks to the change coming about from what you're willing to put in. And I noticed you didn't mention a lot of charity at the beginning. Like you said, you work hard and the opportunities start coming. And that's something I want to ask you about the experiences with charity when you're in that situation, because that's something that a lot of people fall back on when arguing anarchy is, charity will take care of it. And I don't necessarily think that that's a lie or wrong. I think maybe society is structured differently from how it was when churches and charities actually did take care of a lot of those issues. But what's your experience with, receiving charity from actual charities, people, whatever?
Because of my upbringing, I was kind of always under the impression that nothing is free.
Mm-hmm.
Something costs. And it's you might be willing to pay that cost. When I was homeless, I wasn't willing to pay any cost. I wasn't willing to join a group. I wasn't willing to sacrifice my freedom. I wasn't willing to conform just to get what I thought I needed. I wasn't willing to do that. Some people are. No fucking judgment. I get it, but I didn't trust charity, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
From people, organizations, government, I didn't. Because they may not ask anything of you right then, but eventually I feel like they will. And I wasn't prepared to pay a cost later. I felt like I had been paying a cost for so long previous that I didn't, I didn't want to settle, I guess, for someone else's freedom.
Well, and that's understandable.
I don't judge though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I get it.
It's
really hard out there,
It's understandable that you wouldn't be super trusting of, organizations like a church or any state organization either, because those are the ones that started the abuse.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah. And I can only imagine, I don't want to throw shade where no shade should be thrown, but how much of the outreach actually results in bad things for the people that they're supposedly helping.
A lot, I had actually, as a child, I had called DCFS 3 times. When the kid threatens, I'm going to call the state on you, I really did. And I tried. I tried to let somebody know, to say, like, come get me, 3 separate times. And all 3 times I was left. I was left at home, and they took their clipboard full of notes. And I remember trying at school twice. And one of those I put in the book, where, when the firefighters come to your school to teach you about inappropriate touching. And I was like, hey, that's kind of happening. And that really happened. And people ostracized me for, how dare I attention seek? He's such a good guy. And I think people would be really surprised at how many state organizations not only don't look, but almost like condone, like it's okay, like it's okay to a point, whatever that point is, I don't know, but it's really interesting. I think people would be shocked.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's out that CPS is involved in child sex trafficking. Like, it's still there, which it blows my mind. The things like that, the Afghan papers, anything that is available from government that you can look into and see the corruption, and people don't, it's just not a thing. I guess if it doesn't affect you, it really doesn't get people up in arms, is what it seems to be. It's weird what people pick and choose, because it's just, there's so many stories documented, so much evidence of CPS doing that, of all this filth that happens, and it's not knocking people out of their comfort zone, which is, it's a weird phenomena then what's going on in Virginia with that comfort zone being threatened, and that is what people are more up in arms about. And I'm guilty of that too, because that's something that could potentially threaten me directly, whereas I'm not in the position to be taken advantage of by CPS right now, things like that. It definitely needs to be continually brought up, everything like that.
I think it's just interesting to know how connected everything is. The child trafficking, politics in general. So in Iowa, I was actually sold to 3 different towns of people in Iowa. There are 3 towns that I know of. God knows how many towns in Iowa that I didn't get sold to. But just probably within the last few months, my best friend has a professional coworker who confided in her that he was trafficked in 4 different communities in Iowa in the 70s.
Wow.
I was trafficked mostly in the 80s. And so that blew my mind, because even though I met thousands of kids that were survivors or runaways or victims of abuse, that was the first other person that I had met as an adult that had a very similar story to mine, and a man, which goes back to, it happens just as much to boys as it does girls. And I think people don't realize how connected everything is. In my opinion, I've met senators for Iowa, and I don't think it's an accident that Iowa is like the biggest caucus place in the United States. Like,
Jesus.
it's not like, I don't think that's like coincidence, if you know what I mean. And I just feel like government in general, it festers, and people are drawn to government for a reason. It's a bad, icky place.
You're saying you're sold to a town. Like, what does that mean, sold to a town? Like, to the place, or to like the people of the fucking town?
People people of the town, mayors, sheriffs, doctors, specialists, teachers, superintendents, bus drivers,
Fuck.
chiropractors, dentists,
So it's just a
you name it.
whole fucking town of people who are fucking in on it.
Yeah,
Jesus fucking
and
Christ.
not everybody,
Yeah.
but yeah, a lot of the more wealthy, a lot of the more connected, I guess, have some serious fucking woe.
Fuck.
Some people's wives didn't know about it. You know, sometimes it was just kind of like a low down dirty secret. But my grandmother knew. So there were women that were in on it just as much as men. And I think people just don't realize the magnitude of this. Epstein is not new. Epstein isn't um, an anomaly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is happening all the time um, to a lot of people that you would never suspect.
Jesus. Well, fuck. If, you know, if the Boogaloo doesn't get kicked off tomorrow in Virginia, fuck waiting around for this shit. Why aren't we boogalooing in these goddamn fucking towns? Holy shit. Like, people know where this is at.
I'm ready,
where the
man.
fuck
I'm
is...
ready.
Why... What the hell? My mind's blown right now, to be honest. And I'm a little disgusted by the magnitude of that. I'm a lot disgusted by that. I feel weird. I don't like it, but...
You know, and what's really irritating is, you know, it was a lot of years ago. It's not something that you have evidence on. People don't really keep a ledger. So it's really hard to call these people out. It's really hard to get change, especially considering the sheriff and the district attorney are clients.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's just really hard to get change when this goes back to anarchy, is when you're asking your oppressor to change. If government is abusing you, why are you voting?
Yeah.
Why are you asking for the tyrant to be nice? You know, it's silly. It's beyond silly.
They're the ones setting up these circles. They're the ones perpetuating this. So it just makes absolutely no sense to go through their justice systems to take care of this. And then another place people muddy the waters is like, no vigilante justice. You know, I'd hate to see that because innocent people could be hurt. And so, yeah, sure. If we form fucking, you know, mobs on the street and just go after the first story that's heard, that's one thing. But you're able to confirm shit that actually happens and take care of it, because once again, they're protecting people because they're in the same fucking club.
Right. It just makes it really hard to change. It makes it really hard to get justice, to get closure, to get peace. And I think there's a lot of people that I've talked to that are almost waiting for someone else to give them peace, for someone else to give them closure, for someone else to give them permission to make peace with it. And wrong.
Yeah.
You're going to be waiting your whole life. You have to do it. You have to get peace. You have to get closure. Whatever that means, it's different for everybody, but you have to do it.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to get it from the state. You're not going to get it from anybody else.
Yep. Personal responsibility. Being an individual. That's where it all comes from. And you know, it's that doesn't negate the idea of having a community that you stand with, because it's a community of individuals. And a lot of people, I want to clarify that, because a lot of people screech over that, collectivism. And it's like, no, that's not it. You got to find, like you said, your peace, do things for yourself, liberate yourself. And that's hard in the face of a gigantic fucking pedophile government machine. And so it's okay to squat up and do it. You know, I'm pretty openly vocal in my calling for that. I'm done with this shit. A lot of other people are done with it.
Yeah.
Squat up. Let's get together.
Good.
Boogaloo ready.
I so agree.
Yeah. Well, we're about at the hour, as It was a pretty heavy hour. It's good. It's fun talking to you as usual. You said you're coming up with your sequel. You want to talk about the sequel at all? A little spoilers. Give the scoop to the Dank Pod Stash.
That sounds great. The sequel was great. Or has been great so far. The folks that have been gracious enough to buy a copy of the book or read it or in my group have been really, really awesome with their feedback and things that they've barked out that they want to know more about. People want to know more about the broken puppets, man. People are fascinated with the Heathers and the Chads. And I think a part of that is people like to watch car crashes and they just kind of like to see like the human suffering. It's so interesting to know that there's a whole underbelly of this world that we live in. And so I think it's a lot of morbid curiosity, but I think it's like you, where people are just like their mind is blown that they don't even realize that there's this whole underground of yuckiness, I guess. So the sequel is kind of from the shadows perspective. I thought that might be like a really great, refreshing to kind of see it from the tortured soul's perspective and not just the survivor, because your shadow has a voice just as much as your light. And we're so busy muffling the shadow's voice that we don't realize what power or what insightful awesomeness that the shadow has to say. And I think with the sequel, it could really kind of open up into a series, into maybe she turns into a superhero. I don't fucking know. I don't know. But so far, it's been fun to write.
Hell yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. And you said there are people that have bought the book, have enjoyed it, myself included. Y'all need to buy this book. It's cheap. It's cheap right now. It's an excellent read for the money. Tell them where they can find the book, because like you said, people are drawn to the car crashes, but this is going to suck you in and you're going to see the depth and the comparisons and all that like we were talking about. It's really an excellent read. So tell them where they can find that.
Actually just $5 buys you a copy of the book. It's a pre-printing sale. The book comes out on store shelves in October of 2020, so October this year. You can pick up an early copy in PDF form by PayPaling me 5 bones to aka.Dharma at tutanota.com. tutanota.com.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to get all the links in the description too, so people can just point and click, get that book. It'll be awesome. I'll grab all those from you after, but thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about this. Excellent conversation. I loved it. I'm sure people are going to love it, and we'll do it again sometime. Hopefully before the sequel comes out, because that'll be a while, but we'll do it again. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for listening, whatever you're doing. And remember, total freedom, no exceptions. Enemy of the State's Dank Pod Stash is sponsored by Anarchy Lifting. Go to anarchyliftingcoaching.com to learn more.